Hi, we're here at Steve Miner's again, and we're wrapping up a year celebrating the 35th anniversary of the chapter and talking about the history of the club and where it's been and how it got to where it's at today. So we're kind of continuing on with that story.
Well, I say after I kind of got out, after Bob left, and I got more things to do in my life and owned my own business and everything, I kind of dropped back a little bit, and Jay Smith took over for a while. But Jay didn't have the abilities to promote the club like he wanted to, and he had other things going on in his life too, grandchildren and all that stuff, and so he was kind of just he was just kind of the stopgap guy there, and I wasn't at that meeting, whatever, but I guess it was at the Shellsbury show at Shellsbury that he says, hey, he says, unless somebody wants to take this chapter over, he says, well, we'll just disperse this money and the chapter's going to fold. Well, luckily we got the guy here, Tom Twilliger, that decided, him and Jay Martin stepped up and said, hey, we'll take this over.
Pretty much me at first.
Okay.
I didn't really know Jay.
Oh, okay. I thought Jay was kind of in with you.
No, I brought Jay in. I guess the way I sort of fell into this thing, a real quick recap. As a kid, my dad always would go to a tavern and he'd always bring home different beers, usually whatever was cheap, and I always had well, these are cool cans, but Mom would be like, throw that dirty thing and get it out of the house, so I always had a fascination with this stuff. And then jump forward to about 1976, the pastor of our church, his son and I were running around in Humboldt, Iowa, and they were from Wisconsin, and he had a beer can collection, and I thought, wow, this is super cool.
Right up your
and he
alley.
had stories for all these cans and stuff, and I was really smitten by it. But I lived in a place where there was not any of that kind of activity going on, and I guess it just kind of never didn't pursue it, didn't know how, didn't know where. Jump ahead a number of years later, and I'm just out of college and took a job at the radio station in Algona, Iowa, and my cousin says to me one day, hey, I just got back from this really cool beer show at this brewery in Minnesota. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And you didn't take me with you? Mm-hmm. So the next year, I says, when those guys ask you to go, you take me along. So I got to go the following year. Okay. And I walked in there and I just thought, well, this is just cool. They had it set up in the tap room like the pictures back when you were doing it. And I think it was Gary Bewley was standing there, and I walked up and he had a Leinenkugels tray. It's the first thing I ever bought, Of course, I didn't know anything about anything and didn't know what things were worth, and I picked it up and I was like, well, this is so cool. And I went, well, how much is this? And he went, $5. Well, I hate that because it's like, $500, $5, And he went, yeah, $5. I couldn't get a 5 spot out fast enough. Bought a tray and I was hooked. And so then the next year we went back, and that would have been 1992. And this is the second time I'd been to this show. And I had joined the North Star chapter, and I think maybe I joined the ABA. Just because they were about beer signs, and I kind of liked the signage more than I liked the cans. I liked both, but anyway, you're right where you're talking about. Then Jay gets up and at the end of the show, and he says, me and I think it was Al Rabenhorst.
Yes.
He says,
Al was
me and Al, we're getting pretty old, and we can't keep doing this anymore, and we're going to retire. And he says, if somebody from the chapter wants to step up and take over, that'd be great. You can run the show. And if not, he says, we're going to give everything to the North Star Club and the Border Batch will just disappear, and that'll be the end of it. And I sat in the back. I was in the back because they used to do a tasting in the tap room back in the day, and all the beer bottles came to the back, and they usually had, a little bit more in them, and you could sit back there and get a pretty good sample.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were sitting back there, and I'm looking around, though, and I'm like, God, not a person is saying anything, So when it was over, I walked up to these two guys. I didn't even really know them, Jay and Al, and I just said, I said, if nobody else, I said, I don't even know what you really got going here, but I said, if nobody else wants to do this, I said, I'll do it. And they looked at me, and they said, well, you got to belong to the BCCA, and I said, well, I'm not even sure what that is, but I'll join it, that's fine. And they said, well, you join the BCCA, leave us your name and stuff, we'll put it in the box, and we're going to give this stuff to the North Star chapter, and when you get your membership, you contact I think Huntsingers were running it then.
Yep, probably.
And they
Don
said,
and
you
Linda.
contact Don, which I did know them. I'd met them. And I said, yep, I'll do that. So, I mean, as soon as I got home, I got it. They gave me an application. I got that thing in the mail and sent it off. And then I wrote up there. You know, I was back before email and stuff and
Oh, yeah.
cell phones. And I wrote a letter and I said, okay, I've got my BCCA. Here's my number. And blah, blah, blah. And so they said, okay. And about, I don't know, 3-4 weeks later, I get a cigar box in the mail with some patches, some pins, an old check register, and about $13.85 in cash. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this, you know? Well, these guys that had taken me to the show, well, one or two of them, they were BCCA members and had been in the North Star and stuff. And so I said, you guys need to help me. We need to get this thing going, and we need to start doing some shows and keep this thing alive. And they were all, yeah, you bet, we'll jump in and we'll do it, you know. And so we started planning and plotting, and we started planning a newsletter, and we didn't even know we actually changed the name of it because we didn't really know. We just thought we were starting our own, so we called it Border Batch Express for a while. But we started putting out a newsletter. I don't know where we got the money to do it, I suppose out of our pockets.
Yep.
And we had a list of names, and we sent them out, and then spring rolled around, and I'd contacted the brewery and set up their first show, and it all just kind of went off like clockwork.
Snowballed from there.
And, you know, everybody, I was like, well, where are we going to get raffle prizes? So everybody came and put stuff on the table. And so, yeah, it snowballed from there, as you say. And, I mean, we muddled along that was 92. And I think I got Jay Martin involved in about 1998.
Oh, really? I thought it was
somewhere in
earlier
there.
than that.
No, it was me and those guys for a couple years. And then I'd met Judy, and that was about 94. And then she started helping me with it. We did some shows in Algona and Clear Lake and things like that, and she started really helping with the newsletter. We would send it out. We did it till about 98 or 99. I just kind of got to be friends with Jay over that period of time, I guess. And I said to him, you know, maybe you ought to be the vice president of the club. Oh, well, yeah, I could do that, you know. And so he got a little involved, and then he started writing some things, you know. It might have been 97, but anyway, late 90s, he started writing some things. And I said, well, you know, that's great. And then we started kind of getting a few more members back in, and you like kind of somewhere in there, I think you kind of came back to the shows and stuff like that. And then it was about 2001, 2002. That's when like Stubby got involved. Well, Vance Donner first, I think, and Larry Mack. And then Stubby heard about it through them up at the B&L or something, and he come out and got involved, and then eventually his brothers Dan and Ted and, you know, a bunch of the New Ulm people that we have now got involved, and it have all contributed, you know, greatly, and we've built this thing back up, you know, and added Stubby Fest, and you know, for a while we had the show at Smiley's, and then we turned that into Stubby Fest and the Christmas party, and so it's really rolled right along, you know. And then we did the year you donated the Scenorama, and we raffled that off and built our treasury up, and we've been able to accomplish some things, and we've got, you know, the newsletter went from being hunt and peck on a typewriter and cut and pasting some stuff out of a beer magazine for a graphic to a nice full-blown color with the, you know, digital videos and stuff included, and a website. I mean, it's come a long ways, and I guess I feel pretty good about, you know, and we did the 30th anniversary glass. We did a 25th anniversary mug. We've done a 35th anniversary deck of cards. You know, we've done some pretty neat things.
We're kind of like the Rolling Stones, man. We just keep going.
We just kind of keep going and going,
and I'm really proud of that. I look back at I see our early beginnings and how much fun we had back then, and this group that we have now is just you know, hasn't missed a beat, and I say our chapter. I think our chapter is just as strong as it was back then, and I say it's just fun to just, like you say, watch the progression of the thing. Yeah, it went down a little bit, but boy, we're on our way back up, and we got a whole different group of characters, but it's the same theme.
Yeah.
You know, have a good time and collect what we want and get together and just share our knowledge and everything, and it makes me feel good to know that the chapter has, you know, continued on.
Well, you know, I mean, if you look at, like, say somewhere in the mid 80s to the early 90s, it could have very easily gone away. And
Oh,
here we are,
Yeah, and here we're just strong as ever.
35 years later.
Yeah, and like I say, we're still going strong. I say we never quit, and I say I'm really proud of that because, like I say, when from our beginnings back in the late '70s, and you know, I say it's pretty amazing to watch the transgression through the whole, you know, the period of time there where a lot of chapters folded during that time, and like I say, we hung in there, and you know, thanks to guys like you that you know, kind of breathed new life into the thing, and now we're right back to where we started basically. I mean, it's fun. I mean,
It's great, and here's to another 35 more years, and
amen to that,
we hope
brother.
somebody will step up and pick up the torch someday when we're done with it.
I hope so.